everyone. You guys ready? After lunch, the after lunch crowd. Woo, come on, let's get our energy up. There you go, I like that. I like that a lot. Hey, so I'm Jeanette Hausler. I'm the Vice President of Americas Marketing at UiPath, and I'm your host for the Inspiration Theater, so welcome. If you were here earlier, you might have heard me make a plug, but I'm gonna do it again, which is, hey, we're all here together. We're in person. When's the last time you went to an in-person conference? Never mind a conference about automation. Pretty amazing we're together. And one of the things when we're together that is just unique to humans, right, is collaboration, connection, networking. And so if you take your phone out, I'm going to encourage you all to download the UiPath Events app. In the app, there's an area called Network or Networking. Someone can keep me honest. And you can actually go to you can search by name or company name, which is a great one. This is the AI, right, panel. You might want to connect with some of these speakers, right, and our moderator. So I highly encourage you to connect, network, and collaborate through the app. All right, so promise me, yes? All right, downloading the app, yes? All right, good. The orange one. All right, so our next panel is all about basically using automation for advanced processes, but extending automation to AI, ML, NLP, natural language processing, really getting a great view of how these amazing companies are using these technologies. And one thing I want to mention, I mentioned it at our earlier sessions, I'll mention it again, what impresses me about this group of people, all from different companies, different organizations, is that they're all putting humans at the center of their technology decisions. So I leave you with that. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our panel, Sunil Tahil Ramani from UiPath. He will be our moderator. He's our Director of AI. Definitely connect with him. He's in the app. Dan Stokel, Solution Architect, Willis Towers Watson. Sri Raju, CEO of SmartBridge. Bob Meyer, Head of Digital Platforms and Digital Solution Design at Takeda, and Shefali Shah, Managing Director, Global Digital Transformation and Integrated Intelligent Automation at JPMorgan Chase. All right, take it away.
Thank you, Jeanette. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming, especially after lunch. This is an exciting topic, and it's great to see the amount of interest. Automation and AI are becoming critical success factors in determining global competitiveness, as well as becoming significant drivers of recovery as we come out of the pandemic. During the keynote, Ted Kumert earlier talked about how automation and AI are complementary technologies. You can use AI to automate more advanced processes, and you can also use automation to deliver AI into your business processes, fulfilling the promise of two technologies together. According to estimates by Gartner, 80% of organizations deploying RPA will include some form of AI over the next 24 months. And that's a staggering number. The lines between RPA and AI are blurring, and we'll unpack that during this particular session. Before I introduce my esteemed panelists, I just wanted to mention that over the next 45 minutes or so, we'll break this into two acts. Act number one will be our customers and partners sharing their journey into AI. And then we'll open it up to more Q&A style, kind of covering a range of topics that hopefully would be top of mind for you as well. So without further ado, I'll love to introduce Shefali Shah. She's the Managing Director of JPMorgan Chase, and would love to start with your journey.
Thank you, Sunil, and thank you, UiPath, for having me on this panel, and thank you, all of you, for joining us today, this afternoon. It is a first of this after the pandemic, so it's quite special in that way. But starting with our journey at JPMorgan, and our journey into RPA began somewhere around 2016, 2017, where we initially focused on more of the very manual, standardized, structured processes. They were good for getting those automated, and they were easy to automate through RPA, where we were emulating the human processing. And we had our COE do bulk of the scripting. So that was a good success for us early on. but very quickly realized in our processes there were a lot of data involved. There were a lot of Excels and people downloading things, but then it went into Excel, and we couldn't have a bot go row by row, cell by cell to do automate. So we introduced things like Acceptor, Alteryx, into the mix to kind of transform that data, organize that data, structure that data in it to make it, then take it to the next level of automation. And we also introduced the component of structured OCR, where we were taking structured forms and automating those. So that was easy to do with some of the early OCR tools. But very quickly realized coming into 2020, and especially this past year, through pandemic and all, that we needed more. We need to integrate more capabilities, and that's where ML and AI is coming into play for us. And that's where our real focus is, as a true end-to-end integration, and moving into more complex use cases, leveraging AI, ML, especially for our unstructured data, unstructured customer inquiry processes, and so forth. So that's what we're leveraging, integrating AI. And some of the ways we're looking at the models that we want to use AI, ML for, and where we have proven capability in partnership with UiPath and the AI Center capability, is around the document understanding. And we're going to want to go beyond kind of invoicing and purchase orders and things that we still get, but we have contracts. We have a lot of industry, financial statements that we review, for research and for investment deals. So we want to try to see how we can automate those unstructured data through the document understanding NLP capabilities. We have a lot to do with language analysis, right? We have a lot of global location, a lot of customers still function with us, business with us in a local languages. So we're figuring out how to use some of the translation capabilities and structure those data as well. And also customer communication in a local language via emails and chats that we want to try to analyze and bring that data into the mix to learn from it. And the other is around the trend analysis and tabular kind of data analysis with regression, pattern, for our reconciliation purposes, our general ledger purposes, our trade settlement purposes. So that's we're really looking at leveraging that. And then more importantly, what we like is we have a large data and ML team within JP Morgan, where we have to be very careful of how we're using data in a regulatory industry. So we're really looking at how do we build models internally. They're proven for our purposes. They're evaluated by regulators. But what we're excited about is that with leveraging AI Center, how do we integrate those into the processes and scale them the internal as well. And so some of the areas examples that we've done automation so far and how we're going to further expand that is around, from the starting at account opening, onboarding a customer, KYC, all the way through, trade kind of research and analytics and everything in between with reconciliation, transaction processing. And benefits that you all have seen, I think it's totally taking this to the next evolution of automation capability, and would look forward to discussing more.
Yes, and thank you. From one regulated industry to another, I'd love to welcome Bob Meyer from Takeda Pharmaceuticals. He's the head of digital platforms. And when we were talking, he's championing at Takeda an AI companion initiatives. Would love to hear more about that and the mission of Takeda as we go along.
Thank you, Sunil. Yes, I'm very happy to discuss how we're using automation and AI. Takeda is a top 10 global pharmaceutical company with Japanese roots. We're 240 years old, so this isn't the first massive transformation we've been through. Takeda is a very values-driven company. We try very hard to put the patient at the center of everything we do. So when we talk about unleashing the power of data and digital, the reason we're doing that is to maximize the positive impact we can have on patients' lives. When you're embarking on a transformation of this scale, it really helps to have executive support. And we're very fortunate that our CEO, Christoph Weber, has a very crisp vision for equipping every employee with an AI companion or AI assistant. So from the top, we have strong support to go through this data and digital transformation. Before I talk about technology, though, I want to talk a little bit more about people. So if you're embarking on a big transformation and your people aren't part of the journey, it's not going to be very fast. It's not going to be very effective. So it's very important as you build your automation, your AI programs, your transformation programs, that you have an inclusive program design, that you bring your employees with you. It's really important to build community among your employees and between your employees and your customers. so that it's a collaborative, positive transformation experience. It does have to be structured and disciplined. So I think some oversight, really clear governance is critical. And AI and automation, it really starts with talent, upskilling your staff, bringing in the people you need to support you. Now let's talk a little bit about technology. So how are we extending innovation with AI? How are we connecting AI and automation? And I'd say there's 3 themes. The first is extending the reach of automation with AI. So we are using AI in Takeda to make RPA and other types of automation accessible through virtual assistants, voice assistants, chatbots as examples. We're also using algorithmic triggers. So imagine a security algorithm detects an incident, how can we automate that response? We're also extending the capabilities of automation with AI. So using SaaS or PaaS APIs, AWS, Azure, or custom algorithms developed in a variety of tools. We're connecting those to automation to make them more scalable and more accessible. The third area, the third theme where we're connecting automation and AI is by using automation to help manage AI. And that can help with data cleansing, it can help with model maintenance and even deployment. So there's a whole range of ways you can connect automation and AI, and I'm very happy to be here to talk about that with you.
Great, thank you, Bob. We'll go over to Sri next. Sri is the CEO of SmartBridge, and he's bringing a partner angle into this discussion. And you work across several different customers in medium and large enterprises, and you're seeing different patterns emerge. Help us understand what you're seeing, and especially you brought in a use case with one of the customers you've worked with, Heinz in this case.
Thank you, Sunil. So I have 2 roles. The first one is the boring role, which is to run SmartBridge. It started about 18 years back, but that's the boring part of my job. The second part, which is the more exciting part, is working with clients and advising C-suite on what this whole transformation is, applying all these technologies, and helping them plan and execute the journey that they have to go through. And it is a journey. It's not a one-time project or event. So that's my exciting job. So RPA, ML, they're all technologies, but this trend is here, trend is happening. You cannot resist the change, because companies that resist will die 1,000 cuts. They don't have a choice, because the train has left the station, and they have to figure out what is it that these technologies do to the organization. Fundamentally, it's a change to the organization. Right? It's a business change. Companies have to figure out what their new business model is. There are 2 fundamental foundation principles. First thing is moving from a fuzzy understanding of the needs of the customer to a sharper one. That's the first one. The second thing is moving from the traditional value chain-based ecosystems to a digitally connected ecosystems to enable this promise of the first one. Right? Those are the fundamental things. Let's not lose sight of the fact. Now, all these technologies are that. So my client here, so we advise clients, and this is a case where we recently advised a client, and we actually helped implement this. Heinz is a global real estate company. They are in 25 countries, 144 billion in assets around the world. So the interesting thing is, so you saw the quote previously, Jesse Cirillo, who is the CIO, he's a visionary with this whole digital transformation. He's creating a digital work environment in all the commercial properties. So obviously, he's doing a lot of things to make it easy, make digital tools available for them. But in this case, pandemic hit, and everybody working remote. So one of the things he wanted to do is automate their AP, the unstructured AP invoicing. No, they process a lot of invoices across the company because they're in so many countries. And every property has its own invoice processing that they have to process. So he wanted to try with initially in IT, with the IT invoices. They did some RPA about 2 years back with Blue Prism, then stopped. And then this thing, pandemic hit, and they wanted to try this. So we partnered with UiPath, and we initially implemented the document understanding Initially, without the AI part, the success rate was only about 50%, and there was no learning after that. Once we brought in AI and machine learning, we went up to 95%. Phenomenal success, and they're so excited that now they're going to scale it up to the entire organization globally. So that is what they did. Look at the results, 95%, 90% improvement in the efficiency with which they're processing these things, and that's just one use case. And we're working with several other clients that have similar use cases, but I think the promise is there. We talked about change this morning. Change is very, very important, so let's not lose sight of that fact.
Thank you, Sri. And those are some outstanding business results. Congratulations. Dan, when we were talking, you mentioned one of the interesting things was you started with AI and then entered into RPA. Tell us more about that. And it's a reverse journey. A lot of people start with RPA and then go into AI. Yours was different, so tell us more about that.
Sure. So I first feel like we need to orient you to Willis Towers Watson, who we are. If you're familiar with the organization, you know we're an insurance company. UiPath, in fact, only refers to us sometimes as an insurance company, but we also do a large amount of advisory, management consulting. And that's the world that I've lived in since joining the organization 13 years ago. So as a technologist, a solution architect, it is a great advantage to be in proximity to such great thought leadership. Our advisory expertise and the leaders in that space, Julie Gebauer, who heads up what is soon to be our Health, Wealth, and Rewards segment, speaks at Davos. She is one of the preeminent thinkers in the space, and really helps, being incubated in that environment gave us I'd say, starting with a people-first mentality. We really do focus on, in our world, the talent experience. That is empathizing with all of the employees in your organization and understanding how it feels to do their job. And we have tools that we bring to bear to facilitate this understanding process that we, consult our clients with. As we sort of learned from all these perspectives, we decided to eat our own cooking as we formulated our automation journey. Sunil, as you mentioned, I was sort of fresh off of a research spike on AI and how we could apply that to some of our software, and we had built a business case for conversational UX or chatbot. That was 2018. And 2019, we started looking at automation. And we decided to use our own methodologies. So we did things, the graph you can see of the word clouds was actually the output from a tool we use called virtual town halls or virtual focus groups, in which we asked a series of questions of the people that we were going to be working for, our business groups, and said, what would you like to see out of automation? How would automation make your job better? And the things that we found were, aside from the pesky things that you see on the word cloud, also I would be able to do more high-value tasks. I'd be able to produce more value for the company. So we really set our sights on that as we moved into our first year of our journey. We had built up the business case really to focus on one of our business areas that was fresh off of a process redesign, global process, so they've rebuilt their processes to be globally consistent. And this COVID, obviously we didn't know was coming, but our automation business case went from being, this will be a great way to bootstrap this new process, to this is essential because now we have hiring constraints and the seasonal workers that we bring in annually to do, this is a compensation survey, so we intake compensation salary surveys, and we then produce them and publish them for our customers to consume. So it was a critical part of our being able to stay roughly on track in a pandemic year. And we managed to finish a number of other things as well. But the use case that, Sunil, you mentioned, which was the first one we did, was how do we protect the data that's coming in from our customers and ensure that we're complying with global privacy regulations and ensure that the PII is not there when it shouldn't be. So we used a cognitive service to bootstrap an automation that did just that, saved us hundreds of hours and reduced the need for that seasonal work. So I'll leave with just this one point here, is that this sort of template, as a solution architect, I trade in patterns. So I'm somewhat proud of this because we thought of this back in 2018 and really thought of, here's where this is going. We're going to be building automations. We want to give them access to people to have that engage portion of what was talked about in the keynote this morning. And that's essentially what we've been gearing towards or building the past year and a half. So it's been an amazing journey, and UiPath has been, we could not have gone this fast without this platform.
That's great. So we'll now move into our Act 2, where essentially it'll be hopefully questions that are top of your mind. One of the first things I wanted to start off, maybe Shefali and Bob, are we beyond the hype cycle? Are we into what Gartner calls slope of enlightenment, where use cases are well understood and they're getting deployed in your organizations?
Sure. Yeah, I think definitely we're kind of pivoting from the hype, and more is that technology has evolved and it's becoming more proven. So it is, I think, the right time to integrate it and leverage it. And at JP Morgan, we're definitely, that's our priority, is to know your data and value your data and really use your data to solve the problems that we don't, that we still have, and actually go even beyond that, right? How do you look at this use of data and this technology for that art of impossible? So we're definitely embarked on that. It's a big focus for us at JP Morgan. We have internal, data science team who are building models. We're proving out things for our businesses, and we're definitely looking to scale that in the coming year.
Thanks, Bob.
Yeah, so I agree. I think we are well on our way into the slope of enlightenment. But I'd say I don't think we're at a single point on the slope of enlightenment. I think AI is a really broad field. I think when we start talking about AI, we frequently jump to deep neural networks and general AI, right? We're a long way from that. But when we look at automation, packaged AI services, AutoML is coming a long way, and machine learning, algorithm creation and development. Yeah, they're all moving up that curve. I think at slightly different paces.
Yes, no, it's a spectrum, like you said. Maybe we'll ask Raj and Dan about what you're seeing as you work across different customers. What sort of use cases are you seeing pop up to the top, and how are you advising customers on where to focus? We see a lot of use cases, of course, in unstructured data as well as variable processes. What are you advising?
Interesting. I think what I would say is it really depends on the organization, the culture of the organization. Some companies, they have started their journey. They are if you look at the crawl, walk, run, some companies are in the walk stage or in the run stage. Some companies are still in the walk stage. It depends. And to me, from what external as a consultant, when I go and when I talk to the executives and the leadership in the company, it really depends on the culture, the leadership, their knowledge and awareness, and then that's what is going to drive the innovation culture. Companies, if they don't have innovation culture, then it's very hard to make things happen. So that innovation culture is extremely important, and that's why we're conducting hackathons and various kinds of things. We'll create momentum in not just in the senior leadership, but also in the mid-level and junior level that they get excited. Then I see the journey much further along. That's not there, it's not as much. I'll give you an example. Now, you're talking about where does it apply, where does it not apply. A simple use case that you would not believe that this could happen. Some of you may be from Florida. There is a restaurant, this is a restaurant, quick service restaurant, which serves Caribbean concept. Now, what they have to do is they have to cook food, grill chicken. It takes an hour and 20 minutes to grill the chicken. Now, the cook knows, okay, I need to grill. Okay, they come in the morning. Okay, I'm going to put 10 on the grill. Today is Tuesday. Let me put 5 more. Just they're thinking, human thinking. You don't know how they're thinking and how much of it is going to go to waste, because 45 minutes later after cooking, it needs to be wasted. So look at the inventory and all those things. So when we looked at the process, we said, no, take a step back. Why don't you let machines do all the thinking and let the human follow what the machines is directing? So we put in an AI-based system, and it's an iPad in front of the grill, And the iPad is going to tell every 10, 15 minutes, I think 15 minutes, now put 5. Now waste 2. So now the thinking, now you can take any cook and put him on the job rather than the guy that has to know how to do this. So made it easy, reduce waste, and freshness of the food is extremely important in the concept because it takes an hour 20 minutes, right? So you have to be cooking ahead of time before the customer even walks in. So just imagine the use case, applying AI and machine learning based on all the past data, weather data, and all those things to figure out how many to tell the cook to put. So if you take that example and now apply that to your situations in your business, you'll find lots of use cases.
Yeah, so you're saying the number of use cases are almost limitless. Dan, your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to level set when we talk about AI. We do this with our customers who are, say, consuming our virtual assistant. Because there's I mean, Hollywood has done us no favors, right, in terms of what we think about AI. And the reality is that it is right where we are now. There is a journey in cognitive science, and cognitive science is working on the hard problem of generalized intelligence. Will they figure that out? Maybe in 10 years. Maybe someone has a epoch-changing idea tomorrow. But that aside, I think where we are as technologists is really curating what that science is producing, because it's producing a lot of very meaningful and very helpful assistive technologies. Natural language processing is one that has been around for a while and is now reaching a maturity stage that, for example, the data cleansing process that I spoke about, that is all enabled by cognitive services. It's doing things, frankly, better than people would, because our process prior to putting the AI in place was to have people read a spreadsheet full of tens of thousands of rows. It's not what people are good at, So there's that piece, which is we are curating sort of the usable technologies. There's also kind of the bleeding edge. If you look at natural language again, like GPT-3 is a neural net trained intelligence. You can throw a corpus of words at it and it can write you a demo sample of a Point Break script, for example. It's pretty fun to watch, actually. But we wouldn't, as an advisory company, put that technology in front of employees who they want the right answer. They want the curated answer. They don't want a approximate answer. So it's about finding the right fit for the tools, but there's plenty of opportunity. When you look at knowledge management, just the simple act of NLP providing you essentially a connotation or a semantic match of a question is far more powerful than what we were working with before. So that's where I see us as sort of being on the vanguard of this automation movement, is finding the right solutions to the right things and not trying to shoot too far past the bow. And that message has resonated, especially when we compare it, we can deliver it slipstreamed with something that actually is a solution that people like, saves them time, and gives them some value.
Love that. I'd love to switch gears and let's assume now that we know what use cases are we implementing. I'd love to talk about organizational readiness. How do you determine whether your organization is ready to take on? Sri earlier touched on like culture of innovation. People in this room can help drive that culture. What other ingredients are required? Maybe Shefali, you want to start us off?
Sure. Yeah, I think that top management expectations and the sponsorship is a key. And I don't think there is any CEO or any CIO or any executive will say we don't want this, right? We don't want to do it. That would be a big mistake. So I think I think is given, and everyone's ready to do it. It's the how you go about it. I think it's the organizational readiness really important. So I think for us, it's like really driving from top down and bottom up, right? Training our teams who are doing a lot of this manual work, or just buried in this data and manually trying to create, PowerPoints and, trying to manage all that information and can't get through the data, or to analyze them, to educate them and, get them ready for skills of the future. Rather than them typing the data and collecting stuff, let's show them how you can analyze it and how some of these, technology can help them. So I think teaching and, engaging that teams or actually doing the work is really key. Other key of readiness is the right set of data and a data quality. Because if you use bad data and a bad quality of data, you're not going to have a right, any machine learning model is not going to produce it's going to produce a bad output. So we really need to focus on the quality of the data and access to the data, and then be able to apply the machine learning or the algorithms and models to it. So that data access is a really key for organization maturity.
Yeah, and data is a phenomenal topic. We'll touch on that a bit more. Raj, from your perspective, when you go into customers, is there a sense of automation maturity that you look for before you embark into AI projects, or you can directly start with AI projects as well?
Well, being a consultant, if the maturity is not there, that's an opportunity for us, right? But yes, definitely we do look at that, and that's why once we assess very quickly assess the maturity at the leadership level, one of the things we offer is out of the possible education. Because you need to educate the executives sometimes in understanding what's out of the possible, what are other companies doing in your industry, and what are other industries doing that you can learn from. You take Amazon as a poster child, for example. You can take lots of examples from Amazon. Okay? So educate them, and then after that, then we go figure out what all things we need to do to help mature them, educate them, as well as to enable the implementation. The thing I tell them is, you have to start the journey somewhere. You have to be ready to fail, because it's not always going to succeed, and you learn from your mistakes, and then have a culture of accepting failure is okay, because you're learning in the process, because it's a journey, and slowly start incremental wins after that. If the executive thinks, no, I just put $1 million and I just need all this stuff, that's it, I don't have anything more, you know what, I don't know if that's the right client we can work with, because not everything will work. So culture of innovation and the ability to accept failure and learn from that and move on. Fail fast. Fail fast is important. You don't want to take 6 months and fail. Yep. So the other thing that I would probably add to what Shefali was mentioning, she was talking about data, is how is the data organized and do they have the data? Because without data, you cannot do these things, without properly structured data. So one of the things we do for clients is when data scientists run their models, if they're running on their Oracle database or SQL Server database, and that's where the data is, guess what, forget it. They're not going to scale to perform. So they have to modernize, they have to take advantage of the scalability of the cloud. So we actually help a lot of clients scale up and migrate their data platforms to Azure or AWS and create the data lakes where data scientists have the freedom to go get at the data and scale up as necessary. If you don't have the capability, then your hands are tied. Then it's very hard.
That's great. And touching on the data topic, I'd love to bring in Bob and Dan into this discussion as well. We talked about governance and topics around fairness. How are you addressing these topics around both RPA's ability to get data as well as designing governance around it?
Yeah, definitely. So I'd start by suggesting there's two types of AI, or two types of algorithms. There's the type you buy, maybe a product feature, maybe a packaged API, and there's the type you build, where you generally have much more access and control over the data. I would assert, or argue even, you need to care about data for all of them. If you're buying an algorithm and that algorithm is biased, it's going to impact your business, your customers. If you're building it, same situation, right? You really need to take a scientific approach to data management and make sure that you aren't automating bias. And I think that requires a different level of skill set than we're historically used to in RPA. Takeda, huge citizen program in Takeda. We have 500 citizen RPA developers. They start very inexperienced, figure things out. If they don't work, they watch, they try again and fix it. With data science, transparency is much more challenging. So I'd say take a scientific approach to how you manage your data, and you'll end up in a better place.
Thanks, Dan.
Sure, and with respect to data, I think the topic's been covered well by the panel. The one thing I would mention is just the constraints, because I look back 15 years, and not that some organizations were always holding this at a higher standard, but it was a lot easier to go, hey, customer, can you give us your data? Yeah, sure, here it is. And now we live in an era with privacy regulations, data security. These are all these are monetized constraints, because if you don't follow the regulations, you'll be paying money to someone. So I mentioned that to emphasize not sort of a scary topic, but more the value of putting a lot of effort into good data maintenance practices that can be reused. I've watched this sort of scattered domino effect of GDPR and other privacy regulations hit my businesses, globally, or at Willis Towers Watson, and you see everyone kind of reacting to them differently, and there's a lot of waste in the system when you do things that way. So it's hard to do at scale, but if you can get any reuse in a data intake pipeline assisted by RPA and other AI, if you get any reuse out of that, then you'll have gotten a lot of value, because no one wants to write the constraints more than once. With that sort of constraint piece aside, I would just echo the importance of machine learning. Ideally, having that competency built up within your organization, because if you need to go outside and address some of the very good concerns Bob mentioned around bias and the like, you need someone who speaks the language. So at a minimum, you need someone who's conversant in it. But ideally, you've got teams who can roll your own models, because that's likely to be a big part of the fabric that's being woven right now.
Great, thanks, Dan. One of the things that's top of mind for hopefully a lot of you as well is sometimes AI models get stuck in POC and lab stages and don't move into production. According to some stats, only about 20% of models actually move into production. So building momentum, like Shankar Vedantam's keynote earlier, he was talking about kind of driving change as well as persuading. Maybe Bob, here we'll start with you. How are you building momentum in your organization around driving this change?
Yeah, sure. So at first I'd look at that 20% number. And you might look at 20% and think, oh, that's a tragedy. We're investing all this time and effort, only 20% of things are getting to production. I would flip that and say, maybe that's a good thing. Because we only want the good models to get into production, and we want to experiment and fail fast and learn so that the right solutions get into production. So first, frame perspective. In terms of how you get started, it depends on where your organization is today, but I think it really starts with culture and inspiration and showing people what's possible. So first you have to show them what's real and what's science fiction, good point about Hollywood, so they attack the right problems. And then I also liked what you said about start bottom up and also top down, meet in the middle. So I think bottom up, groundswell enthusiasm is a great way to build initial momentum. But if your business strategy and your technology strategy aren't aligned, you won't be attacking the high value problems. So I think it's been a very exciting forward so far. I'm really excited to see what's happening with process mining. I think that's going to be a really brilliant use of AI to help companies invest in the right areas to maximize value.
And there is a level of orchestration that you need to bring in different infrastructure, different support teams. How are you doing that, Shefali, in your momentum into AI?
Yeah, absolutely. I think having that strategy, as you mentioned, around the business and technology and the people, so it's process, people, technology, right, has to come together with the business strategy. Where do you have a gap in your current, thing? How do you want to leverage data and this capability of ML, NLP, AI, into your processes? So defining that and having that, understanding of strategies is very important. And then different teams coming together and solving a problem together. So data team can't work, individually, or the data scientists can't work, separately. And then the technology has to come in to be able to have access to the data and the integration of the output from the data, so you can enhance your workflow or you can, enhance your customer experience and so forth. So having that all intertwined and integrated and a decision made together and supporting each other is a really key.
Yeah.
For us, the other key is the governance of this data. Both the usage of the data, especially the PI, customer data, industry data, how we're accessing that, how we're paying for that data, that's a very big deal. So that early governance of where the data are coming with, are we allowed to use it, how are we using it, and then the outcome from it. And you exactly said, a lot of times the initial output doesn't come, and everybody just say, well, it didn't work. But you can't give up that. So if you're using a NLP classification model, you got to train the model. So we got to be relentless about training it and having those resources to train and validate and prove out that it works and keep up with it till it gets, deserves the output, or it gives you output, or you say, okay, it didn't work and we tried it and we got to try something else. So that's how we're kind of tackling the operating model and the governance of it.
Yeah, thank you. One of the things that comes up in customer conversations is the partnership with the data analytics team. We at UiPath are, of course, developing, making AI accessible to RPA developers and even business users, but at the same time, work with data analytics team is required. I'd love to start with Dan and hear your perspective on how are you seeing the partnerships between RPA and data science teams?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's one of those capabilities that is not as distributed as it could be. We have very powerful models, off-the-shelf models, as some of the examples I provided that we've done. So these are technologies that otherwise aren't getting sort of permeating into your daily tools. So you see a little more of it now, like in Power BI and some of the analytics tools where they'll say, AI infused, and it's not really. It's kind of like it's a flavoring. So this, I do see that. I see RPA as a way to bring both some of the more salient off-the-shelf products, but also those custom models that are. If you're a sophisticated organization, as any enterprise is, the off-the-shelf doesn't work off the shelf. It gets you a certain point of the way there, but then you tend to have to wrap it and do some additional modeling on your own. So to me, RPA can become this sort of conveyor for it, either for people to use sort of a human-in-the-loop process, or even just to deploy some of these models. We take a mostly unassisted robot approach to those, where if we can take the data cleansing, for example, or PII detection, no one has to run that. It just goes. So those are our favorites. The sweet spot for automation being no user required, just run this thing and let the people who used to do that do more valuable tasks.
And Shri, you're working with a lot of medium and large enterprises, and some of them may not have a data science team. What are you seeing in that regard?
So the success of these programs, whether it's analytics, RPA, AI, depends on the organizational alignment. That's absolutely key. And there's no model that fits everybody. Okay, it depends on the organization. Some organizations, certain model works. Other organizations, it does not work. But in general, if we look at best practices, what the big guys, McKinsey, Gartner, and all the big guys will tell you, and that's what we see in most of the companies that are actually modernizing, is don't lose sight of the fact that everything that you're doing, all these technologies, are really there for achieving certain business purpose, right? Ultimately, moving the business along into the future state. And where are all those ideas in terms of what needs to happen? That's all in the business. They understand that data better than anybody in IT can, right? So traditionally, IT used to be all programming, all development, all data, all reporting. Everything used to be that way. If you go back several years back, things have changed. Today, best practices call for data, ability to consistently make data available consistently in a timely manner. IT, nobody can do that better than IT, right? So they own that. But they don't own the data. They own the process. The data is owned by the business. All data consumption from the analytics, AI, and RPA to automate processes, everything is residing with the business because they are the closest. But then you don't want to end up in a bot anarchy or Power BI report anarchy, no standards, nothing, right? So that's where governance comes in. Governance, you can talk about centralized or decentralized or hybrid or whatever it is. We can figure that out based on the situation. But a governance model is the one that puts all these things together and gives certain guidelines, standards, and all the security and all those things. Ultimately, we have to market these things in the sense that all these tools, AI, you can run some bots and you can create AI models. But ultimately, you got to market them. You got to market them to the business and the leadership And that's where marketing these things, not just technical guys, but doing some code stuff. But how do you market that? How do you message this to move the organization forward, and why these are aligned with the business strategy? That's very, very important. Otherwise, at some point, somebody will say, I'm spending so much money. What's happening here?
That's great perspective. We're coming to some of our end of our time, so a couple of questions I'd love to ask all the panelists here. We call this session the future of automating advanced processes. Think 1 year from now, next forward, where would you like to be, and where do you see this industry headed?
Sure, yeah. Kind of looking ahead in the future, I think learning and continue to learn and teach our people, and really look at this from our team, human perspective. How can we make that impact for the good, right, and the sustainability and so forth in our life and in our businesses. So that's a really key. I think I would like to see some use cases and some application of that in a way. Other thing I would say is continue to learn and partner, right? There are so many problems that faces some similar industries, cross industries. How do we all this is a great example of coming together. Jeanette mentioned about networking. I would love to see us come together to solve some problems together, so we're not all duplicating it, and create greater value from this technology is something I would look forward to.
Same question for you, Bob.
Yeah, so I think automation and AI today, over the last few years, a lot of companies have focused on using AI and automation just to support their existing business. Help automate finance or payroll or supply chain, right? Some fractional improvements to the business. I think what I'm really looking forward to over the next few years is seeing people use these technologies to transform their business and the products they deliver, how they engage with their customers. So as an example from Takeda, we do a lot of invoice automation now that we have OCR as an example. But we're moving towards digital diagnostics that could scan an X-ray and tell you if you're sick. So I think moving in that direction and using these tools to change your core product offerings and how you create value, that's really what I'm looking forward to over the next few years.
Raj?
The train has left the station, right? There's no stopping. We can't stop it. So we have to innovate ourselves individually and collectively within our organizations to take our organizations forward, because otherwise organizations will die. The digital is disrupting everything. We have seen lots of examples, Ubers and Amazons and everybody else. So there's clear cases in front of us, and companies are trying to transform themselves. If they don't, they will die over a period of time. So it's in our power to help move this, which means that we have to innovate ourselves. I tell my people, I've been working for 35 years. I graduated in '86 with computer science. In these 35 years, there's never been a better time for people like us, because of the rapid change and rapid innovation and the opportunities that is in front of all of us. Either you embrace it and adapt and take advantage of the opportunity, or you don't transform, you will die too in personal life. So,
thanks, Sri. Dan?
I think the defining characteristic now is the speed of technology. RPA, automation, AI, these are all exponential technologies. I didn't make that word up, but I think we're seeing, just seeing the keynote this morning, I'm always, frankly, kind of shocked at how many features are added in each new product cycle. And that will continue to be the trend. Product cycles will be faster, they'll be producing more. So the technology is the train. It's going to become a Hyperloop pretty soon, but that's where we're at. And I think the people following the technology are going to be driving the process. So that's why I emphasize the need for curation, for sort of generalized knowledge, because the people who are close to the technology are going to be helping to curate how we apply it to solutions. So that's sort of how things get ahead of us, but what does that mean for us? What I hope, for one, is it gives us the ability to turn on a dime. There's been a lot of really great pandemic success stories. We had a pandemic failure story that I was privy to. We had a client, a healthcare system, who had inefficiencies in its staffing model, where you had a COVID spike in one area. They were hiring people at great expense locally when they had bench time in another regional facility. So we saw the problem. We kind of watched it go by in slow motion. The technology and the tools can help us solve the problem in real time. That's my hope, and really, that's the promise of the technology, as long as we don't get in the way, or we learn to use the technology to collaborate and solve problems in real time. I think it's the key.
One last question. We'll do this in the reverse order. What is one thing you want to leave the audience with as they take away from this topic?
Just start using these tools. So the AI is free. All the service providers that give you AI tools, you can experiment with them. I think that's where the fail fast mentality comes in. It's a case where people might accuse you of looking for a solution, a solution for a problem that doesn't exist yet. But it's essential that we at least sort of become aware of this new tool set, because if not, we're going to be using the old tools to solve problems, and the tools bring their own solutions. So that it's important to have that at least bit of a research end to what you're doing, so you can survey the field. I can guarantee you that problems that you didn't even see before will start to materialize, because the solutions are now at hand.
Raj?
I agree with what Dan is saying. Tools are very important, and you should be aware of what the tools are. What I would add to that is, however, don't be a AI RPA guy that's taking a hammer and then looking for a nail to hit. Because we need to be in solution mode, which means that solution may come from a combination of technologies, not just a single technology. I'm just going to hit the nail, right? Sometimes that is not the right technology, right? So you need to become a systems integrator and a problem solver, rather than a technology guy going around looking at this. So make sure that you approach it that way. Then I think we can quickly solve problems and take the business forward.
Bob, same question.
Awesome. Yeah, so we've talked a lot about technology. I'm going to pivot back to people. And so I'd say, as you look at AI and automation, think about your customer for Takeda. That's patients around the world. Make sure that you're serving their best interests, that you're applying technology in a way that aligns with your values. And as you go through this experience, be brave. Be willing to make mistakes and learn, because we won't make progress if we don't try.
Thank you, Bob. Shefali?
Sure, I echo all three of you what you said and agree with that. Only other thing I would add to that is look for the right solution to solving the right problems, or the problems that you haven't imagined yet, and the value this tools can give you. But more importantly, know your data, quality of your data, and and have that available before you start chasing some of this stuff. And sometimes you just want to use new shiny tool or new shiny thing, but really look at what problem are you solving, and work capability will help you do it the most effectively.
Thank you. This has been a fascinating discussion. We covered a lot of surface area. Thank you to each one of you, and hope you found it useful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.